Good morning, Mincy.
Good morning, Mr. Whale. How are you, sir?
Yes, you're looking forward to waking up with Whaley again.
I'm looking forward to another wonderful week back in estate agency world.
All right.
Where the sun always shines.
I'm already feeling a bit vulnerable. There's a lot of quite negative stories out today, and so I don't need you sort of.
Okay, well, let's concentrate on the positive. I saw you had a really good Father's Day. You went axe throwing or something in a forest.
Again, this isn't a euphemism. I did actually go axe throwing. It was good. I was bundled into a car at 8 o'clock in the morning, which I don't like doing, and I wasn't told where I was going, so I thought, this is it, like the long Good Friday where suddenly he's driven off, and then
was George just sat there sharpening an axe head on a rock, going, "Don't worry about it, Dad. Don't worry about it."
I could clock it on the sat nav, but we were going to Warrington, which, as I said, isn't normally where most dreams happen.
No.
But yeah,
it's where they built the first British IKEA ever. It's where dreams were crushed.
It absolutely is. And I've been there and consumed the hot dogs, as most men would, and that is a euphemism, where you obviously sit and wait for your partners to go around the store, don't you? So, and of course, every time they open, there's a massive queue on the motorway.
So you did the axe throwing. Did you
and knives,
meaningful
ninja knives?
Ninja as well. But some big hipster guy was supervising you with arms thicker than oak trees.
He was known as Ginge. He was ex-army. He looked like he could flip at any moment, but it was thoroughly, and I do mean this, thoroughly good fun.
Do you know what that was? That was like when Rachel Googled great Father's Day gifts. That's the first thing that came up. You know that?
You mean in the AdWords?
In the AdWords. When you got home, was there like an IPA home brew making kit on the table as well?
Oh Christ, that'd be disgusting. No, it was very good actually. And then I had a fantastic snooze. And how did you go? How was your wonderful Father's Day?
I got breakfast in bed, which was nice. Great.
Yeah.
The kids baked me cookies at some point, which was also all right. I mowed the lawn.
So your kids can ostensibly use the kitchen and hot ovens without you noticing.
And no, but my wife supervised them, I think. I was made to mow the lawn, which I did, and I then went and queued in B&Q for an hour. That was an experience.
Yeah, as I said, I really don't want you bumming me out on a day like this. So, I suppose it's fine actually, because it happened to you rather than me. So, it's all good. It's all good.
I'm not ready to see people again. Members of the public.
What are you looking forward to mostly this week then?
It's been an amazing run so far. So there's sort of 4 or 5 weeks. No, Graham, the picture behind me isn't upside down. That is a Chagall knockoff. And it's a very famous painting, actually. But I bought it for £3 off a Chinese student. So that.
you peasant.
Are both kids yours? I've been on Tinder.
You need to explain this.
I have. I post every single year. It's my running gag. I post a picture of a DNA testing kit on Father's Day every single year, and it gets the same round of applause every single year. And Tom McGee has taken it very seriously. He wants to know if the kids are mine.
Yeah, not like you to rehash an old joke.
Fuck off.
There's that legendary bad.
So what am I most looking forward to about this week? Sorry, getting back on track. It's been 4 or 5 weeks of genuinely decent activity, and every single week when we wake up and go to work, it's like, oh, it's gonna stop this week. The madness is gonna stop, but it seems to just be perpetuating and continuing. The interesting thing is that last week we were joined by the other shops, the Primarks of this world and everything else, in terms of the huge numbers of people spending money out there to prove that they are alive and well, and that they won't be held back in by the government anymore. And it's phenomenal. Every single agent that I speak to is reporting the same sort of levels of activity. They literally cannot cope. It's got to the point where I've turned into that agent that Chris Watkins hates, that produces pie charts to say, "Hey, look how wonderful we are." But genuinely, it's been the only time ever I've been able to hold a pie chart up that says I'm doing so well. You're not going to take that from me, Chris.
Is that without you having to kind of edit it down to sort of price between 100 and 193,000 pounds, bungalows with one between and two bedrooms,
all customers with less than one leg and only one teeth? Yeah.
The joy of homes. How I used to love seeing how people manipulated that.
So we're going to see how long this economic miracle lasts for, but we are seeing, and this isn't just here and there, we're beginning to see a lot of cautious valuing going on in the marketplace, which is what we've always predicted, that if the mortgage companies are going to take a harder stance on lending money, which they are, a lot of them are changing their offering to first-time buyers. They're increasing the amount of deposit that people need, so we're getting back into those bad old days. But it starts with the valuers. The valuers are the ones that start to sprinkle that little bit of pessimism across the marketplace.
And that's echoed today, isn't it? I'm assuming you raised that as well by Anthony Codling's article in Estate Agency Today, where he does talk about that.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what I was doing.
Segued perfectly.
I was so upset. Before we get onto the estate agency today, and we should do, we'll talk about Anthony Codling, who's an interesting character in his own right. Saddened today, and deeply saddened, because actually I had a very good relationship with her. I'm sure you did, but Ros Renshaw is hanging up her typewriter.
That really is. It was, I made the point. What the best way to start off the week. She, I made the point. I think that she's seen a lot of people sort of disappear from the industry, either tragically passing away or retiring and anything else. And a lot of those people are called legends, but often it's a little bit overstated. But that certainly couldn't be said to be the case for her. She was absolutely at the top of her game, and
she managed to walk that fine line between somebody that wanted to sell a lot of advertising space and somebody who genuinely cared about journalistic integrity.
Well, I can tell you now, I never had the slightest conversation with her. Many, many conversations, but never had any conversation on the commercial side of it. For me, don't get me wrong, she had people supporting her that, of course, were trying to, get the advertising and everything else. But from her point of view, it was really just, in the best possible way. What's the gossip? What have you got to tell me? That's blatant bullshit, Simon. That's advertising. I've seen right through your very transparent effort to get that into property industry eye. And she was really, really well balanced, and she had to be, really, because you do, obviously you get supplied by just so much advertorial sort of nonsense that, frankly, if you published all that, there would be very little interest. It really would just be, property industry would be nothing in the same way as it was, obviously, with Ros pointing it out. So I think she's done an absolutely fantastic. She was lovely as well. I had a couple of squiffy lunches with her where I tried to. I knew she had a little writing pad out, and a pen was permanently in her hands, and I think I kept saying, "Well, this is all off record, isn't it?" I kept saying to her, and every now and then
she's writing it down.
Yeah, she did, and I do what I normally do. There is okay. Well, a bit like Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they're all drinking the vodka back. I thought I'll get a totally squiffy, and then she won't remember anything. And absolutely terrifyingly over the cut she was. By the end of the meal, we'd had a good couple of bottles, But she, over the course of the next few days, she kept coming back to me with that story where you mentioned XYZ. Can I go live with that, or can I do this? And it was a terrifying knack whereby it's that person who lets you get bladdered and then takes all your information. So I loved her. I think she's absolutely fantastic. It's important to point out that she's only retiring, isn't she?
Yes. For those of you that tuned in, nothing as intensely bad has happened to Ros. She's just retired. Okay.
Yeah.
Simon's gone for full obituary. It's not true. Okay.
That's not it.
This is a tribute, but nothing more. No, actually, I worked with Ros on when we had the whole. She was the only person in any of the press that was interested in talking about portal juggling, which at the time was such a massive scandal. And it was only Robert May and Kris Wood and nutcases like me that were interested in talking about it. But she took it. She made it front page news, and because of it, Rightmove, she was part of that effort. And Rightmove changed their policies, and the industry cleaned up its act a little bit. It still happens, but not as much, nowhere near as much. And I nothing but respect.
It's a classic case there of a grassroots campaign getting a bit of attention and focus, isn't it? And showing what can be achieved. I'll always remember as well, really well. She was obviously always after the scoop. But she would be really hard but fair as well. So obviously when we were selling Reap it the first time round a few years ago, it was all done very, very secretively, as you can imagine. You don't want that sort of information getting out. And she got wind of it was just months ahead of anyone else and asked me to confirm or deny the story. And I was just very honest. I had to sort of say, look, Ros, it is happening. It's at a really tricky point there. So if you would just, hold on to this, and I had to then obviously go into negotiation mode. I said, look, we'll give you the full scope, the full scoop rather. We'll give you an interview when it goes live. And she was like, okay, but as long as I'm first, and I want a full hour interview with the MD. And it was great. And she did it. And I think that sort of that acumen, that judgment, not to be too soft with your contacts, but also, not to burn those sources as well, was her knack and skill set. And so, will be missed.
So who's going to take over? I noticed that I think managing director stepped in as sort of deputy editor for the time being, but also states they will be looking for a new editor. Do you not fancy that job?
What, with full gotcha headlines and things like that?
You could turn it. It's like what was his name? Peter Cook, when he took over Private Eye. This could be your moment.
This is really it. We could take it back to the good old news of the world. I was born in Kuwait. I could do the fake shake. With a slightly Brummy accent, I could do loads of stings.
So let's pick up on a few other things that you're obviously happy about. Football's back. Is it the same?
Yeah, it's the same tedious shite. So we there was Arsenal capitulating after being ahead. Liverpool and Everton playing out 0-0 draws in front of a booing recorded crowd. It's great to be back. It's as I said, hopefully we only need a couple more weeks to win the league, and then we can all go back into lockdown again, because it's health over wealth.
And the other question I was going to ask you, you travelled last week to London. So how was it? Was everything open for business?
It's absolutely bizarre. So we saw Graham down there. It's bizarre because obviously the trains are completely empty. Euston's completely empty. What people are around, it's like 28 days without the zombies. Although it's definitely going to mutate into zombies, and that
were the prostitutes still working at King's Cross?
No, I had the day off.
Hey, we didn't rehearse that one either before, did we?
More of that in the months to come.
This is why it works.
Yeah, it's why it works. But it's just bizarre. Obviously, I was walking down by the Cenotaph, and you could see where all the protests were. You could see some of the windows, obviously, that were smashed down. You could see the graffiti that was there. But yeah, there was just very little around. So I don't know. Personally, I changed my mind on it because it's a bit weird because obviously agents have been back for so many weeks and you're talking to them over all the time. You probably think that we're a bit further ahead in terms of the country than we are. And as you said, it was interesting to see the shops opening the other day. But I genuinely think, and this isn't me just pleading, it's going to take the pubs and bars opening before that sense of normality returns. Because there's no doubt at all, it feels very, very strange at the moment.
Is it a bit premature, though, to sort of go back to normal?
No, I don't think. I mean, I don't know.
Do you think it's basically over, and that it's? I'm not buying into the conspiracy theories that it never existed, and that we. But there's a part of you that goes, hang on, no one I know.
Yeah.
Do you know? I mean, I know people that have been affected by it. I know people that have been in hospital. I know people that have lost parents to it, but not as many as I expected in terms of evidence of people around you, if you like, which is great. I'm very grateful for it. I'm glad to still have my friends, family, and clients alive.
Why didn't Charlie Purdos go? Oh.
But it's just interesting. It's one of those things. It seems even like from the government's point of view, from the press's point of view, everybody. It's almost like we were all waiting for this wave to break on us, and it never quite hit as hard as they thought it was.
Yeah, it is really strange. But you're not teasing me. You're not teasing that statement out to me. It's all over, and then the second wave hits. But I got it completely wrong, didn't I? Because I did think it was just seeing those pictures of everyone on the beach and in the parks, and it just seemed to me, God, this second wave is absolutely inevitable. We've come out of it too early, and yeah, you know, first things, first time I've ever admitted it, I got it completely wrong. It seems like on that point, I don't know.
Across the water in America, I read last night that the numbers in Florida and places like Arizona, they're just rising just massively. Yeah.
Or 4,000 or 5,000 cases in Florida in a single day, isn't it? So, you know, those sorts of, and not to make this all political, but watch me make it all political, is it's the red states. It's the ones that have ignored wearing the masks and everything else, all those blue states and everything else. And you can see that if it's not fake news, as he keeps saying it is, the trajectory for infections in those blue states that have lockdown, that have done social distancing, are recovering as many others are around the world. And yet those red states that have said, you're not taking away our personal freedoms and have marched on town centres are seeing it. So maybe that's just a form of the Darwin Awards in reality, sorting things out.
I think that's definitely going to happen. Darwin Awards are going to be very interesting this year. Are you sponsoring it again?
The Darwin Awards. All the weird and wonderful ways I have of spunking my cash.
Your cash. Right, let's get to. You had some other international news, did you not?
Before we go into some more of the property stuff, there was a couple that obviously, again, let's go for my specialist subject. It was this concept that pubs could require drinkers. It was an independent pubs could require drinkers to leave contact details, essentially signing a guest book as you go into. So that you can be swiftly traced if you contract coronavirus. I'm not falling for this. This is a way for partners around the country to trace where you're.
Is he there? Yeah. Send him home.
What do you think about the wider just fuckwittery of this app? Have you been staying up to? You've been keeping up to business, up to speed with this. The fact that it was going to be a world-beating system. It was going to be a world-beating technology, and they've obviously abandoned it already.
So I I was amazed because I read one of these stories of, every now and again you log on to Facebook and some idiot's got their profile changed to, from today onwards, Facebook can use all your personal photos to blah, 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 and they'll sell them to pedophiles and they'll masturbate all over them. All that sort of stuff, right? And I dismiss it as conspiracy theory 9 times out of 10. One of them I logged on was, did you know that your phone may have updated recently and that Google and everybody else have installed this app without you knowing? And I thought, nah, that can't be right. And I went in there and it's fully there. And I think the ability to track people on that basis it's immense. And I'm surprised they haven't got it right, because maybe they actually want to show the public it doesn't work, because it does work. Because actually the consequences for it actually working really well are horrifying. The other thing is
opium.
What happens if genuinely, let's say I were to get it today, and contact tracing means that everybody I've come into contact with, our resident socialist in the house.
Comrade.
But genuinely,
sorry, he's just right there, isn't he? Just interrupting there. I mean, the government that gave you Kris Grayling cannot touch something without it turning to shit.
Listen. We are now talking to the we're talking to the industry that was given hips by a government, and told that it was the future of house selling forevermore. Fucking hell, talk about bad faith. But no, you look at that app. So everybody I've come into contact with, that's every customer, that's every family member, that's every, basically anybody that I farted within sort of 2 meters of, would then need to go into hide it. It just, the whole thing is a bit bizarre. This whole concept of bubbles and who you can allow in and who you can't, and people, I get it. All of a sudden, the internet was awash with pictures of grandchildren hugging their grandmas for the first time in 8-10 weeks, whatever it is. But nothing's changed. Like, literally nothing's changed. The disease is still there. We do not have a cure for it. We've not particularly become better in treating it necessarily. The doctors have done the very best they can. But what's changed?
I'll just say the fundamental that it's out there, but it's just out there in such relatively low amounts now, isn't it? That as they, to be fair to them, and God, I don't want to defend the government, but based on that grading system, the 5-mark approach, they've downgraded it to 3, haven't they? And that meant that we were all going to get the next level of freedom.
You know what? You've fallen for it, haven't you? We're talking the whole way through. They were talking at the beginning. They were talking about the curve, weren't they? The curve. They were talking about that curve. They brought out the graphs. Then
Love a graph.
Then they brought out this game changer, the R rate. We'd never heard of the R rate the whole time. All of a sudden there was an R rate, and now we've got a 4, 5, and 3 system that I've never heard of either. Apparently we're now below 4, aren't we?
Well, to be fair, they've nicked all this as usual. So the R rate came from marketing and was the viral. Cheers, Tom. Keeping it.
Grandma, if you're watching this, don't ignore Tom. He's a nice boy.
You're not dead. And also obviously they nicked the system from the terrorist alert, didn't they?
Is that you? That's you, isn't it? That's George.
That is George. He's now he's in the house. He is.
George is immensely clever. He worked out that steak bakes taste like steak, which, George, by the way, is unbelievable considering they're made of horse and dog meat. That's basically what it is.
Spoil that for him. You, George, you get back to work. You're meant to be doing your maths now. My maths, little shit. Yes. Anyway, so you have to say happy birthday to him now. Actually, it was his 10th birthday, so going on about 18 at the moment. That lad.
Happy birthday, George. What did you get? Did you get to go to the forest and watch Dad throw axes.
He got to throw it. He was quite good, actually, disturbingly good. I don't think the teacher's going to be that happy when he, when he gets back on board. So anyway, that's not good that he's found a way to get in on the show. But anyway, I'll give him his own YouTube channel soon. So I think you're right. It's all seems a bit. It feels like on the overall, we're just going through the motions to race towards the unraveling, don't we?
The unraveling of society.
Well, no, the unraveling of all of these restrictions. I mean, I said it before. I do think it is. It really does feel like the moment that everyone gets that first pint in their hand, it's like it's over.
I love the fact that George is with us today. That's amazing. There's a big time difference on it. Yeah, George, there is a bit of a time lag. So what you can actually do is you can rush into that room now, hit Dad over the head, and then go back and comment on it as it happens live.
I'm encouraging him to do this, David. He'll start doing this with the official webinars later on. So I'll be talking about Mio, the sales progression and chain tool, and he'll come in and walk me over the head.
Let me ask you a question on that. How is life in webinar land? Are people still loving it? Are ICG still doing those massive panel shows that look like the Muppet Show opening?
Everyone spoke about a restructuring of business, everyone changing the way that we do business. Clearly, obviously in lockdown, that was all the options we have. But I think what's interesting is we've moved now to a Netflix style, environment. You know yourselves, obviously there, how many people just watch these things at a given are brilliant. Well,
okay, all right, thanks, George. Oh my God!
You see what I told you? Don't put my ideas in.
Oh, best day ever!
You're gonna have fun with it now, aren't you?
This is honestly, this is better than Babe Station.
It's what everyone wants. That's it. Yeah. Vote now to see how George can beat up his dad in more constructive ways. Awesome. It's good. It's really, really good. We're doing obviously seeing a lot of very exciting companies. I think the key thing is, David, and I was talking about this to my team. The reason why these webinars are quite important as well is I more than anyone am meant to have a sort of overview of the industry, the suppliers in the industry. And what I found really surprising is how cursory that level is. And indeed, talking to many people when we do these shows is, I knew generally what you did, but the raft of detail and ways that they can help out is something that I haven't really seen before. So you've got the likes of Kris Watkins, obviously fantastically. He's done interviews with loads of people before, but I think just by having that repository now on the Kerfuffle website for all these businesses, so we're lucky enough, Kris has actually allowed us to put all of his videos on there against the different suppliers, and we're doing them ourselves. Thank you, Andy. That's really good in terms of helping agents make better decisions.
You definitely have. Honestly, one of the I know this is the Kerfuffle podcast, and it sounds bad to be plugging it, but genuinely, you are one of the COVID winners. In terms of utilizing this time to prove concept, if you like, and relevance to agents, and the fact that I spoke to, by the way, I'm about to sign up to a Kerfuffle deal. I sat in on 2 sales progression webinars, and I've decided to give it a go. So I've been speaking to
Richard from ASAP.
Yes, I have. Yeah, last week. Genuinely, it's an eye opener, and I honestly, if you would have asked me, I would have said, get a lot. In fact, I think I did. I said, yeah, I'm happy to sit in on the sessions, but as far as I'm concerned, we've made our mind up that
you didn't want to.
Hey?
You didn't want to.
No, but I'm an attention whore, and I love to sit on all these sessions, so it doesn't matter. But no, but genuinely, I think these are great services, and if you can, it's about efficiencies, isn't it? If you can free up your time to concentrate on areas of business which are dollar productive, then eventually what I can do is, if I outsource enough of my business, I can get round to returning Mark Bevan's call.
Yeah. Yes, it's almost like he's obsessed with that single point, isn't it?
He's a lot taller than his wife, isn't he, in that photo?
And he's got a tiny head as well. For the frame of the body, his head
is remarkably small, isn't it?
It's like the headhunters. I think you can still say headhunters, can't you? Headhunters have got to him, and he's still alive. But anyway, yes, okay. Look, so let's go back to. Have you seen the story in again Property Industry Eye about the spat between the property gurus?
Yes, yeah, I did see this. So I think the nub of it is, and I know you're. I asked you the other week, if you don't mind me being extremely honest. I asked you whether or not you, as a company or as an individual, had applied for any of the government support grants that were available, and you said to me, no, because I wouldn't give the Tories that satisfaction, like they give a shit who's claiming it. They're going to go, Simon Wales not on this list. Why is he not on this list? But genuinely, I think you are obviously an extremely principled person, but you're a rarity. But I think what caused controversy was that one of these gurus was basically saying, yeah, claim your bounce back loan, use it to buy investment property or whatever it may be.
So can I read you out the quote? Well, I mean, apart from the whole, using this money to make a quick buck, and that summarized is what it's about is. It was actually this phrase that really wound me up. It says, no other course can get you up and running a successful and scalable SA business in such a short time. In just 8 weeks, you can be bringing in enough cash flow to create a springboard to real transgenerational property wealth. It's like full-on double glazing salesman sort of bullshit speech. It was like, look, I don't know Vanessa particularly well, but I think if you read that story, it's not hard to see. It's not hard to side with people, and I'm not being naive, of course. I understand that some people are, they might not need that money and are doing it for the right reason. But it was the point that this Paul Smith seemed to almost be saying, building into the plan, that there is no need or intention to have to pay this back. Oh, well, that's fine then. Let's fuck the 2 nurses that could have paid for, or and all the rest of it. So it's like,
yeah, but that's what socialists like you failed to appreciate, that the rest of us, when we're making our judgments in life, we don't necessarily care. Not that we don't care. The average person cares about themselves and themselves only, and to think about the butterfly effect or the knock-on effect of taking a loan to help their business survive or whatever it may be, just to give them a bit more headspace, and then the knock-on effect of how that affects the funding of nurses and the NHS. You see that because you do that whole joined-up thinking thing that socialists do. But a lot of people, they just take it and they get on with life.
Yeah.
And that's the danger.
Well, if I was going to give him, and I can't even believe I'm saying this, if I was going to defend him in any sort of way, it is that actually they've made it too open, too easy, haven't they? But whilst the country's collapsing around you, it's probably fair to say you haven't got all the time and energy in the world to make it watertight, have you?
Look, I think if they had, as we know, had they had an opportunity to plan for this, they would have ballsed it up. So, actually, this sort of let's make it up as we go along approach is the best of 2 evils. It really is. Talking about evil, tell us about what's going on in Korea.
So Korea, okay. So this is, again, it's worth it just for the quotes. And again, I'm going to have a little bit of flight of fancy, but it says here, in a tit-for-tat move, North Korea on Monday said it is ready to publish and release propaganda leaflets and balloons to teach the enemy a lesson, referring to South Korea. It says in a statement by state-run Korea's central news agency, It says it's turned out 12 million leaflets of all kinds, reflective of the wrath and hatred of the people from all walks of life. Essentially, they're having a little bit of a ding-dong with the south of Korea, which they say is allowing too much propaganda leaflets, again, criticising the north. And look, apart from it's well worth a look at the story itself with some of those, they speak in almost Game of Thrones style, statements.
Yes,
don't they, the North
yes,
Koreans?
they do.
I think this is like Ros has retired today. This is where property industry needs to go. We need to hear on the market saying things like, we're going to teach Rightmove a lesson and they're going to feel our wrath for 1,000 years.
Their grandchildren's children will be tasting the bitterness of Rightmoves.
It is. It's not good enough, is it? It's just not good enough. I think if you're going to go to the trouble of like having a spat like that, and it is worth having a look at that story, the Vanessa one there. By the way, do look at his. I skipped past him to start off with. Look at the guy's Paul Smith's videos against Vanessa, where he describes her as a troll. And I think this is a really interesting dynamic of social media today, where people literally wage their war and make specific recordings to have a pop at people there. It feels very Katie Hopkins, Piers Morgan. It's like it's filtering.
Am I alone in being the only person who'd never heard of either of these two people before?
Well, I think it's fair to say, look, Vanessa and Property Tribes, they are an incredibly successful, people talk in social media about tribes. They have, sometimes quite annoyingly, but they have got Property Tribes, which I think is, as I understand it, it's a landlord group, basically. So obviously, whilst it's not directly of the industry in terms of the estate agents we have there, they've got a huge following, giving best practice and everything else. So I've bumped into them at a few of the things. They seem absolutely perfect and nice, and they have a good thing. I've never heard of that Paul Smith before with his.
I've never heard of him. I don't know where he's come from.
No, it would have been better if it was the Paul Smith of Spices, because then it would have really started to, get things going again. And by the way, did you see him in Property Industry Eye? He was talking about, and on the face of it, it's not a very contentious statement. It was like, talk up the industry, wasn't it? Talk up what's happening.
Yeah.
He's quite right there, and maybe it's my weakness as a person to find fault with everything. Apart from that point where it seems like it's talking it up, beyond the point that's kind of reasonable, because he's right. There is. If you listen to the normal news outlets out there as well, it's always trying to find the negativity. Negativity falls on negativity, doesn't it? Well done, Louise. But he just makes the point is to big it up. But we're going to be left, again, if everyone does go down that route and you ignore the wider market, you're going to just be left with egg on your face, aren't you? And potentially PPI-style claims if you've gone out there saying, no, everything's rosy and wonderful, and it doesn't quite work out like that.
There's a real, as I hinted on at the beginning of the show, there's a real battle going on out there in estate agency world. And Kris Watkins, who I understand why certain people do not like him, he is continually preaching to estate agents about what they're doing wrong, and I think the reason why some people take exception to Kris, who, by the way, in real life is a really personable, nice guy, genuinely wants to help. He gets it. He gets us. I think he gets the industry as a whole. But to have every single conversation start like that, girlfriend or wife that's continually telling him, do you know what it is that you're doing wrong? Do you know what kind of a shit you are? And if that and I think that's a lot of what Kris does is, this is what you're doing wrong. So many of you are doing this, and it's just wrong. And I think one of the big things that he's been going on about recently is the fact that estate that is booga 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 booga. George, not PC, man. You can't do that stuff anymore.
You can't anymore, George.
You can't do that anymore. No, but I think what's interesting is that we're gonna have to shut this down, aren't we? Anyway, I've got to go to work very shortly. But what's interesting is Kris really encourages agents not to speak about how amazing they are. So he doesn't want to hear about how many exchanges and completions we've had this week. He would hate my market updates, for instance.
Yeah.
He wants to hear about how we helped Sally and Bill buy their first home, and how we managed to get, because it had wheelchair access for Sally. It was the first house she was able to see, and how we helped her, and all this sort of stuff. And that's what he wants to hear more of. And I just don't think the rest of the public care that much about Sally and Bill. What they do care about is the price of their own house. That's what they want to hear about.
It's really, look, first of all, he challenges, doesn't he? And people, by definition, some people love to be challenged. And then there's a whole demographic of people, I want to be challenged. And the minute you challenge them, it's like, all right. He has a very, I like his style, but I accept that, there is some people there. But, you can't, one thing you can't say is that it's not successful, because of course he is ostensibly the thought leader at the moment on there.
Didn't you nickname him Property Wolverine?
I did. I still haven't.
And he started to use it.
He's not only used it, he's claimed it, and my 15% as and look, I'm not asking for much adulation, recognition, but he doesn't seem to want to do it. So it's only right that we have a new regular feature on the show. Let's have a go at Kris Watkins until he can. Look, who knows? Who knows? I think.
But in terms of to go back to your original point, in terms of talking the market up, I think he's probably right. We should, at the moment, I think we still need to stay positive. I think that the public they react well to positive stories. They also react immensely well to negative stories. So if you want to cause a recession tomorrow, you just need to start talking about how things are going down, how things are getting downvalued, and how transactions are falling through. And then the newspapers love bad news more than they love good news.
Yeah, well, but think about it. You've got to be careful in your glass house as well, haven't you? Because you should Spices have a load of redundancies, and then everything's rosy. It doesn't balance up, does it? Really?
No. Yeah. Well, look. There's some companies are still very much struggling. A lot of people are still on furlough. I know I've spoken to quite a few people who, but we're talking big industry names that are still out on furlough because their companies are not ready to bring back the most highly paid workers yet.
Did you see that that story on Pie just on that as well, which I thought was about Farrell Hayworth, and it says denies rumour of permanent branch closures, and they've got multi offices around the northwest.
Yeah,
and unsurprisingly, they've only opened up a certain amount of offices now. Is this really a story? Isn't this what many multi-office branches are doing? You wouldn't be given the extreme costs in terms of opening opening an office and getting it fully up, especially without anything there. It seems to me absolutely reasonable, doesn't it, to actually do it on a steady basis?
I think so, and I think also, if we're totally honest, although a lot of us have gone back to life in the office, a lot of us have also realised that we can work outside the office well as well. So there are people that are quite happy to continue working at home, and from a safety point of view, why not? If they can, they probably should. And I think that's also balanced by there is nothing like having your team back in the office so that you can actually talk to them all face to face. The dynamic is entirely different.
It's absolutely. I wonder if I haven't had that story going back to old Ros Renshaw. I heard a story that Savills had told their teams that they weren't expecting to have them back in the offices till the new year, which is is staggering on the one hand if you think about it, but again, you would imagine is again fits for a company like that who obviously would say our staff's health comes first. We probably need to find out on that before putting that out there. But anyway,
I imagine there's a little bit of wealth before health going on, and health before wealth. In terms of cost savings.
It's that idea that the two are separate, isn't it? They only can go together. I mean, we're at that weird stage now where it is looking almost certainly like things like suicides and mental health issues are going to be killing more people now than the hideous disease itself. So, it's why you wouldn't want to be in BoJo's position, would you? Because actually you've just got so many different ingredients to this whole horrific thing.
I don't think there's any way to come out of this smelling of roses at all. Gosh, there's just so much that can go wrong at this stage in terms of recovery. But this is what BoJo wanted. He wanted to be a wartime prime minister.
Yeah, he got it.
He got it. He got it in absolute bucketfuls.
I mentioned on the market earlier. Did you see again on the story there? They were talking about their big challenge, of course, is they've got so many people who are obviously on subscription models on free or discounted rates.
Yeah, and it's included.
You what? Sorry,
me included.
You include. Oh, okay. Let's go real there. So, at what stage do you move to going to a paying model?
We are paying. So we were on the free scheme, and then they came to us with an amount that they wanted, which was approximately, I think, something like 320 quid a month. And we sent them packing, and we basically said, look, we can't see value at that level. We're happy to support it in principle. This is what we're willing to spend. And the rep on the market said, no, there's no chance they're going to look at it. And we got a phone call to say, yes, they'll accept whatever it was that we offered them at the time. Yeah. But I think that's the trade-off. I think we all think that on the market's a lovely concept. I think it's something that in principle we'd all want to support. But at a certain amount of money, it just doesn't become viable because actually it's still not producing the same quality of leads that Rightmove is or that Zoopla is. And they will always talk about number of leads and they will always talk about quality of leads, and those two things can be entirely different. But I think on the market are going to feel some pain at the moment, especially as you see the likes of Home Search rising up the ranks there.
You think that will cannibalise on the market rather than...
I already know several agents who've decided to save money by scaling down their Rightmove packages, getting rid of on the market altogether, negotiating the hell out of Zoopla, and then using that money to go onto Home Search. So interesting, isn't it?
It really is. What would you do differently if you? Because this is the problem with all of these, these schemes where you start off giving on the face of it. We've got to have the, get the content, get the listings, so it makes perfect sense to go out there, do deals. But then you're caught in this just vicious cycle, aren't you, of trying to break out of it and get up. Ultimately, I suppose answering my own question there is it's just a simple ROI thing. At the point where the ROI from the leads, matches or is more than matched by the amount you're spending on it, you're going to see it as valuable, aren't you?
I think so, but I think also if on the market did a better job of engaging with their core customer base, supporting them, then and I'm sorry, but I think they failed. I think coronavirus was an opportunity that they could have taken. They could have done. They could have offered all sorts of stuff, from webinars to...
Strangely quiet, weren't they? Strangely quiet. I mean, the point about the story is that it says, a groundswell of negativity towards Rightmove's pricing has only been amplified by the outbreak, which has seen estate agents struggle financially. Absolutely true, but where was the attention? Jerry Lyons, friend of the show, Mr. PR himself, spoke about how perfectly timed, at least in terms of timing and the initial messaging, ZPD out there, and yet that they should have been gazumped, shouldn't they, at the 11th hour by an on the market representing the agent.
On the market, never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity.
We're having that. That's hundreds of thousands there, right there. Your slogan.
I think Henry Kissinger first put that one together. But he lived in a world where they hadn't thought of on the market yet. No, I think they did, and I think that they for something that was meant to be an industry's champion, have done a really poor job of championing the industry. And Ian Spriggett? Sproggett, he left just before coronavirus hit, which again, sort of bad timing for everybody. But
I don't think he knew anything. If that's where you're going with this.
Well, I'm not blaming the outbreak of a global pandemic on one person.
Here on the Kerfuffle podcast, we have an exclusive. We're going back to me being editor again.
Right.
Ian knew about coronavirus.
On that note, I've got to love you and leave you. Have you got much on this week?
You what?
Have you got much on this week?
Yeah, we've got 4 supplier focuses. Have a look in the normal places on our Facebook ones. I think you're joining me on a few, so you'll have to stop doing that deal a day. That you're doing a deal a day. Is that right?
More. We did more than a deal a day. But you know what? I'm not here to brag. Chris Watkins wants to hear about I'm helping people, so I've got to go because I'm volunteering down the homeless shelter in 2 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to go make George homeless. So
I'll see you at the shelter, George. Have a good morning, everybody.
I'm coming in, George. I'm coming in. Cheers, mate.
Have a great week. See you soon.
Cheerio.